So thank you for joining me here on CloudChats. Today we have a great speaker, but first, before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Rashaan Peak.
Great to be here.
So Rashaan and I work at Leadership in the Clouds. It's a management consulting firm based in Charlotte, but we have a national footprint. I'm the CEO and Rashaan is my Chief Marketing Officer. Rashaan, why don't you share a few tidbits about yourself and what makes you excited about being on the show today?
Again, my name is Rashaan Peak. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and Digital Strategist for Leadership in the Clouds. I'm excited to learn more about career advancement and how I can work better with our clients and share the career strategies that we're going to learn today.
I'm honored to be here. My name is Dilshan Ratnayake. I'm originally from Sri Lanka. I have been in HR for over 25 years. I started as an intern, had several rotations in management and back into the HR group. And now I am the Chief People Officer of a very up and coming cybersecurity firm that is on the tip of the spear on modern technology and keeping the world safe from cyber threats.
What's the name of the company and how long is the company? I think you're in Dallas, correct? Is that where you're located?
We're based out of Addison, Texas. Mm-hmm. The name of the company is Securinix, and we started with inside threat intrusion technology, and now we're in the SIM market, and we're competing with the big boys and girls.
We met several years ago. Oh my gosh, several. It seems like a lifetime, doesn't it? And at the time you Absolutely. Were with another company. But we met, and, you know, as life is, and for those of you joining us here today, welcome. Wealth comes in many forms, and the wealth of connections and networking is something that we always need to connect with. I don't know if you agree, Rashaan, or not, but that's something that, you know, when I reached out to you, Dilshan, right away, we reconnected because we're connected in LinkedIn, but we remember each other.
Absolutely. You will hear a theme, and I won't do a spoiler alert in all my messages. The power of networking, the power of keeping up with each other and being generous at that is important. It's even more important in a diverse community and how you continue to find your place. And I think we've talked about inclusiveness and getting included is part of, you know, leveraging networking.
As a HR expert, but a chief people officer for the company, I want to kick off with a question that, you know, it's something that burns in my soul, I guess, to know, but we discussed driving growth and success, and we know that there are many elements to driving success. You know, my first question to you is, what do you consider to be the one element that enhances a business sustainability in today's marketplace, considering everything we've been through in 2020 and moving forward? What would you say to that?
I read your question and I was thinking, wow, like what's the one answer? And you know, there's this one word that keeps coming back to me 10 years ago, even it's to today, is agility, right? You have to be very nimble and agile and respond to ever-changing conditions in the business, whether it's a tailwind or a headwind. And I think agility is the most important thing. And I'll explain agility really quickly in 3 dimensions. Mm-hmm. You need to be having organizational agility if you're a leader running the C-suite. And we can talk about that, Pat, if you have the time to get into that. And the second one is you need to have leadership agility. So leaders in your org have to have that capability. And then for those of us who are all throughout the organization, your individual self, you need to have individual agility. I knew it was important several years ago, and I watched my own career and watched some high potentials move up the ladder. And the single trait that I see is their ability to adapt and overcome and excel. And that simply said is agility.
You know, when we talk about agility, flexibility, adaptability in 2020, we were all proven globally how to adjust to, I call it the next normal. This wasn't a question we discussed, but you talk about agility and you talk about the C-suite and you talk about moving up the corporate ladder. We're celebrating Women's Month. What words or what tidbits would you give to women that are trying to go up the corporate ladder? Some things that you see are successful traits or ways that we can do it, or is success only one way?
It's funny. I celebrated International Women's Day at Securinix in a big way. It was the first event that we had, and that was important to me. I think I've shared with you privately. My mom was a big influence in my life. Now my wife, and then I have a daughter who's 9 years old, and I think about her, and I simply want to leave the world better than I found it. But as I was talking to this group and listening to some of our guest speakers, it is about taking a seat at the table
Yeah.
and looking forward and challenging, right? What is today's paradigm? And each of those leaders clearly knew how to do that well. And you are in a situation at times that you are the odd person out. And there was one lady that said this: if I'm the minority or lesser in the group, that's a positive. That's a power. I can differentiate myself. It was our sales leader who said, I'm the only girl on the team, but I get to sell differently because everybody else is like each other. But when I sell differently, and I can compete and differentiate myself. So you had to look at that opportunity, while it's adverse, as truly an opportunity.
Mm. Rashaan, before I let you jump in, I have one more question for you. Dilshan, I'm talking about human capital. So human capital and the development of talent is essential in growing a company. Today, we address more than just making sure that we have the effective onboarding process. It's
Yep.
also more important, more than diversity, and it's being more inclusive in the words and practice. Diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusivity is being asked to dance. So my question to you is,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the importance of understanding how a talent development plan in place, keeping in mind that we all need to be invited to dance? How would you balance the two?
I'll answer that in two ways. So I empower the organization at the highest levels for us to investigate this gap and opportunity and make sure it's a corporate priority, right? And then it is always important that the top of the organization manages that as an important business critical agenda. And for the individual, I say dance. You have to be included, but part of inclusion is sitting at the table and dancing. I moved to the US, I think in 1996, if my memory serves me right. And I quickly realized that I had to introduce myself and I had to go there and be included. And once that inclusion happened, people got to know you. It was hard at the beginning. It is always going to be hard, but my version for the individual is be empowered to include yourself and make sure that others understand you. And I think to the corporate leaders, making sure that this is an important agenda. And by the way, it is not an agenda that can be checked off a box. It is a journey that's going to have to continue to time until we become the best version of ourselves.
Now you said a journey two times.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people lose steam when they do something. I've watched it at the corporate level. I've watched it at the individual level. Everybody wants to do something. They want to check it off. I have a different version of that. Is I think it's an ever living activity, and you're just going to get better and better and better at it.
Wow. Well, Rashaan, I don't know if you have a question posed here, but I have a lot to think about for the next question. I have like 1,000 questions that come to mind. But
Right.
Rashaan, do you want to jump in and be part of the conversation?
So I'm supposed to ask this scripted question, but I want to know more about agility.
Yes.
Tell me about how, is there a test? Should people take assessments? How do you approach agility in the 3 different levels that you discussed?
Yeah, so formally you can train yourself in agile management practices. You can go and look at agile.org or agile methodologies. And a lot of the agile principles came from software development. As you know, I work in the software business, so it's easy for me. But I think years ago, agile moved into management practices, and it is about making sure the organization is able to adapt and flow to many conditions in the organization. So there's a ton of learning out there, but I think agile simply is a sort of a behavior than the traditional management model, moving into something that is more real time and you're able to adjust, right? So tons of learning. It is something you again never continue to stop learning, but there's a ton of stuff out there. I will tell you what that means to the individual is that you're simply learning all the time. And as you learn and you're adapting to learning opportunities, you tweak it as you go forward, right? That it's a fancy word to say continue to learn, continue to be your best.
So what's your go-to approach when you're planning out your learning? Life is busy, you have a wife and a child. When do you take time to continue learning?
Yeah, that's it. I'll give you my. So you're asking a personal question. Look, I have made time on my calendar every day to learn something for like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I do that every day. I read something. I listen to different music, and I'm used to the US now. My father says I have forgotten to be a Sri Lankan, now an American, and I take that to heart. So I listen to some Sri Lankan music from time to time. I like take the time to put something in my day that I've never done before. And that's kind of, it's very simple. Once you start doing it, it becomes a habit. It's like brushing your teeth in the morning.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow. So Rashaan, do you have that question, that long question you said you had for him? What was that all about?
The long question of, okay, when people are in transition, we tend to take our talents, passions, and experiences in deciding what's the next step. However, we are in a climate of change and people are looking different in the world. What advice would you give women of color specifically seeking to create sustainable change?
Yeah, you asked it especially for women in color. I will answer that, and I'll say this is also universal. When people do transitions, people have thoughts and aspirations and maybe emotions around it. I tend to think those are important because they give you inspiration. They give you a sense of, how do you say, inspiration. But the one thing I'll tell everybody is you got to plan your transition. If you take it from a sporting analogy, pre-game, during the game, and post-game. So I'll give you the short version. I did a whole training on this with my alma mater. They wanted me to speak about this subject, and we did like 3 sessions on this subject. So I'm going to keep it sort of at the elementary or the sort of the basic level. Is, have you planned your transition? If the answer is no, you got to go plan it. And plan it looks like discovering what you want out of this, right? All of us want stuff, but you got to bring the aperture down and make sure out of this transition, I want X, Y, and Z. That's important discovery. Then when you discover what you want, you got to plan to achieve it. That is the pre-game. Then the during the game is executing that plan, making sure you're staying it. So I'll give you my example of transition. I wanted to move from my former employee into technology. I took 10 technology companies in Dallas. I looked at their attributes, values, what they wanted to do, and I consistently engaged those 10 companies. I got hired by 5 of them. I picked one of them, right? Lots of people told me, Dilshan, that's a bad idea. You should diversify, drop it on everything in Dallas. But I think because I focused and because I had a plan and I've done this coaching with everybody else, I'm happy to say 95% of my sort of coachees land a job because of focus. So that is execution. Then while you always plan things in life, I think I've shared this earlier, you have to be agile, right? Because your plan doesn't always work out. A plan is a point in time activity, but as you go, things may change. You may learn things where you go. So be able to adjust your plan. And then lastly, for example, if you don't get a job, close that job properly. Make sure you close it well, because they might actually call you back later. But some people abruptly kind of close out. Or did you learn something? Were you overselling yourself? Did you ask for the right comp? I mean, was there something there that you should learn? Document it, and then continue to iterate it over time, and then do it over and over again. And my last piece of advice, Rashaan, is you got to have sponsors, advisors. And I'll tell you, family members are not so good because they might not be able to emotionally support you. You might want to look at people outside the family or your immediate friends group, because they can look at it without emotion, because your family members love you, care for you. They may not provide the best advice. I love my family, but I seek my advice a little bit distant from that. So that's my perspective on that question.
You know, Dilshan, you're talking to a woman that is an award-winning mentor for
Yeah,
young girls.
yeah,
And Rashaan makes it her business, we both do, to mentor people, because women have to not only, and I have some men that I also mentor. It's not only mentoring, it's sponsoring and
that's
helping
exactly
people up
right.
the mountain. Rashaan, look at the back of his picture.
All
Strive.
right.
I love going
Big
up the
I
mountain, and
climb.
it's, yeah, that's right. It's not
Big while
giving
you
a hand
climb.
out, it's giving a hand up.
That
So
is
it's
exactly right. I
teamwork.
actually wanted that because I figured you'd pick up on that.
That was great. That is great. So Rashaan, do you have anything else that you want to
You take the approach of sports, and you're always learning, and you seem like you're on top of the game. You got that whole Kobe Bryant mentality about like, so what happens when there's an audible?
ooh,
Well, I will tell you, this week my wife is out of town. I had three of these things going on. I had many meetings and I had several audibles this week. I will tell you, for me, I center myself in prayer, and I center myself in grounding myself with something higher than what I have on this earth. And I kind of refocus my energy back again, right? Because you have to have resets. Things are going to go off script. And that's the way I reset myself. Everybody has a different way of doing it, but you need to know when you have to reboot, because sometimes it's very important to have service recovery. And I have my own service recovery. Sometimes it is what I just said to you. Other times it's just ice cream, basically.
well, Rashaan could tell you this
Don't
week
tell my
we've been
wife that. I've
rebooting.
had 2 pints this week.
Oh, 2 pints of ice cream. Oh gosh. You know, with 2020 being the way it is, resetting is something that can help us all with self-care. Rashaan, don't you agree that self-care is important not only for just rebooting, but also in business itself?
Definitely. It's very important for personally and professionally, just so you can get along with your colleagues, and in this environment, being able to tolerate having your green screen not work is, after
Like
that.
mine.
Like,
So,
no.
flexibility, agility goes for business. We're a business, we're a privately owned business, we're a corporation. One of the things is changing mindset. I see behind you your green screen. I think about so many things, striving and surviving. When you are talking to people that are high potentials, how do you have them also understand the change of mindset? So let me rephrase the question so it's more along the lines of what I'm driving at. What advice would you give to our listeners on ways to develop mindsets that can help them and help others as well? When we talk about agility, flexibility, but if somebody's in the corporate world, taking them from the former normal to now remote, and that's not their normal place to be, they have a new way of doing business with each other, for each other, and with others. So what tidbits would you give them as a CPO of a major corporation there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I've actually answered that several times. One of the things you have to do, and I was talking to a bunch of CFOs lately, is increase empathy for others and increase empathy for yourself. Uh, and I think we refer to it as self-care, but it's okay for things not to go well. And a lot of
Mm.
people are needing to be perfect. I have given up the need to be perfect, and I'm a happy person now. And I am training our leaders to not expect other people, to be more human, be okay to have our teams fail and fail fast, right? I mean, sometimes the expectation of perfection is at the price of progress. So
Mm.
I'm like, we're done with being perfect. We're going to progress.
There's a comment in chat about being happy to be happy with your imperfections. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's
we're all
very, it's very,
humans.
it is very important. But I think, I pride myself personally, and I think, I differentiate myself as I am trying to share with corporate America that being human is the only way to unpack full potential, right? So
Mhm.
I am not interested in creating an environment where people cannot be themselves. I want people of all backgrounds, of all thoughts to join us. And you talked about inclusion, having unpacked their best in the workplace, right? And it's not easy because we've been taught some historical ways of working, but that to me is the new way of working, being real. Like my kids are not here right now, so they're in school, but my son joins me on a conference call once in a way, and it's okay with me. And I do it because I want people to be comfortable that that's okay today. And those were not accepted norms. It has to be accepted today.
And the norms are changing, but it's the next normal. If people think that we're going to revert back to a non-remote world, they really need to start checking themselves in again. They just have to go back and see how they're going to be doing business because one, it's very cost effective. Leadership in the Clouds has been doing it for many years now. That's what we based our company on. But when we talk about people, it's really a balancing act between driving people strategies, your HR strategies for people, and then now let's shift over to business. What would be some suggestions as companies are starting to start up again? Some of them already have started. We feel the ramping up pressure these days of scaling up.
Yeah.
What is the next level of success? And what are some tidbits about aligning our HR strategies that businesses should be looking at?
I would tell you having a conversation with your employees has become more important. Like employee experience is at a higher premium than ever before. And I told you a few days ago, I talked to a bunch of CFOs and I was a little nervous how they're going to take that feedback. Every one of them sent me a private note saying, Dilshan, we've thought about it. We put that in the back burner, but we hear you. I said, if you're not having a conversation with your colleagues, you're missing out on being able to land that plane. It also goes back to my conversation about agility, right? If you look at true agility, it's an iterative process. You're talking to all stakeholders to ensure the business agenda is delivered. And by that, you're providing a social context as well to your employees, and you're delivering on both sides. So it's not good enough anymore to just do business. It has to be both ends. It has to be for the people and for the business all together and every day, all the time, forever on the journey loop, right? And that may be exhausting. I find that refreshing.
Why do you find it refreshing?
Hey, because if you look at the agility concept, you're not waiting for something to be happening at the end of the runway, right? You're iterating as you go. So your possibility of error is limited because you're constantly talking at a closer loop than a distant loop of communication. So for example, if I didn't have a conversation with you about this event and I showed up, you may not know what I'm going to talk about, and I may not know what you want to talk about. While we didn't script this meeting, you gave me a couple of questions. You said, hey, maybe this is the direction I want to go. That's iterating closer. Or you could have said, hey, come up to the call, and you don't know where I'm going to take you. I don't know where you're going to take me, or Rashaan may, throw something in there. The point is, this constant loop on a very close circuit is important to the future of business.
Communication is so important at our company. That's what we do. We keep in touch, even though we're remote. Rashaan will tell you that we meet every week. If not, we're connecting with each other. And we had the great fortune because all three of us, the three women that run the company, we're a women-run-owned company. We met and we did social distance. We wore our masks, but it was so good to see each other physically, but we see each other all the time in the clouds. So communication is important. Rashaan's smiling. One of the things that keeps us going is that, and I keep on seeing the back screen that you have, and I love it because every time a business feels that they're going up the mountain, that they're pushing the ball, the large boulder up the mountain, and if they don't have teamwork, it becomes very strenuous to be doing that all by yourself.
Absolutely.
So teamwork, communication, and agility. I love that word. I heard it yesterday during a conversation with international women leaders, corporate women leaders, and they kept on talking about agility. There's a question in chat. May I ask you the question?
Of course.
It says,
I'll do my best.
How do you address the power and people's experience and behavior around it? Sometimes we don't realize our position and people's reaction to that, not us. Not sure Well, yeah. I don't know if
Pat,
Alfred.
do you mind repeating that?
Well,
I
maybe what
lost
I'll
the
do is,
voice a
if
little
you
bit.
wouldn't mind, I would like to have Alfred. You know Alfred Ramirez. I think you've met before.
I believe so.
I would like Alfred, if you could just take, because we're coming towards the end of the program, I'm going to allow you to talk. If you could ask the question.
Yeah, I guess I just got off a workshop. That's why I'm late. I'm sorry. But
No
we were talking about
excuse. There's
power.
no excuse for lateness. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Demerit.
We're talking about power and power relations and how people react sometimes to the person in power, their position, not who they are. So if I'm in a performance review, it's my boss talking to me, not that individual, and not seeing the empathy that they might be having. And so that was my question. How do you address that whole issue of power and equal the field so you can have a legitimate conversation?
Well, that's a very important item, right? At that, because what I said to earlier, people have views on how things used to be. And I think you have to very openly discuss that. I mean, I know I discuss it with my team that I'm a servant leader. And I can see them look at me saying, okay, that sounded good. What does it mean? Some people Googling what servant leader meant. And the only way you can engage that appropriately is your own behavior, right? So if you don't give up that power to your colleagues and truly behave that way, you're not going to change them to believe in that. Now, 9 months in, I think most of my team believes when I ask a question or I say I don't have all the answers and I want to hear from you, that I'm really asking for feedback, and it's an important thing. And when we do at the end of the day, we are all going to make mistakes. The second part of your question, Alfred, is you got to ask your people, how am I doing? What should I stop, start, and continue doing? My teams, when I came here to this new company, they were like not wanting to answer that question. I constantly ask that in every meeting, and now they're finally giving it. And what I find out is they're not always good at giving that feedback because nobody's asking that. So you help saying, hey, look, if you're able to deliver this message to me, I will react to it, and here's how I do it. And I think over time you get that batting average and you change the culture. To me, I don't think any slogan can change it. Leaders have to behave a certain way, and that becomes culture.
Wow, cultural shift. That's another conversation we need to have.
Right.
But one thing that you say is so true is to be having that communications. Do you have any last thoughts before, Rashaan? Do you have any last questions or any
could
tidbits?
do all day. This has been fabulous. We do have so much more to talk about, so we'll have to do this maybe quarterly.
You know,
Dilshan, but I didn't want to just force myself on you.
Yeah. You know, thank you, Alfred, for joining the conversation. Dilshan, do you have any parting words or any thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I will share this with you. I was thinking about that as well. I said my dad shared this with me. One of my mentors shared that with me, and I'll share this with you. It carries me through the high days and the low days of life. Is always give your best, which is excellence. Always do unto others as you want done unto yourself. That is a form of caring and servant leadership. And lastly, do everything with integrity, right? Very important principles. And never give up. Always look up. You will have headwinds and tailwinds, but if you always to look up, you are taking one step further in your life.
Wow, that's very inspirational. And I will tell you that looking up brings me to mind with Leadership in the Clouds. That's how the name came about. I'm always looking to the skies, and I saw puffy white clouds, and they always inspire us. So I really appreciate you being with us here today. Thank you so much for taking time out. We know that integrity means a lot, and you're a man of integrity. I've always thought that. And I'm really glad that we reconnected. And I know this won't be the last conversation, right, Rashaan, that we'll have?
It won't be.
I'll be honored, guys. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Everyone, take care. It's a blessing to be with you today.
You know, thank you all. I'm Pat Martinez with Leadership in the Clouds. You've been watching our program, CloudChats. Thank you so much for the conversation, Dilshan, today. Rashaan, as always, it's great to see you. And we'll see you all next time in the clouds. Goodbye.
Bye.